Hey all, here OS Reviews. About this time last year, we checked out the Soundcore Life Q45s, which were Anker's active noise canceling over-ear style headphones, which were excellent, especially for their price point. Going for around 130 bucks, it was cheaper than competitors like Sony and Bose, but delivered really good sound quality with high-res audio certification and support for their companion app. Well, now about a year later, the company has released a follow-up model. They have rebranded the series, so it's no longer a part of their Life lineup, but rather it's part of what they're calling the Space line, and so this is now their Space Q45. Now in terms of upgrades, this one will come with up to 50 hours of battery life, which is about 10 hours longer than the 40 hours that was on the Q35, and it also uses the latest Bluetooth 5.3 chip compared to the previous gen's 5.1. It's a pretty marginal upgrade, but should further improve things like stability and also optimizing the efficiency of the battery performance. It still retains Ldac support for high-res audio, wireless, and more importantly, this model now improves on the active noise cancellation, bumped up to 98% reduction in terms of the adaptive ANC, and now should really rival the best of the best. Now otherwise, again, that long battery life is quite impressive because, say, the Bose Quiet Comfort QC45s can only get around 25 hours or so. So this can get you almost twice the battery life of a lot of those competing models, which is really impressive. Plus at a price point here of under 150 bucks, which even though it is 20 bucks more than the previous gen model, it still is decidedly less than the competing brands you'll find. Now aside from the case with the headphones inside, you also get a quick user guide. So anyways, inside we have, of course, the headphones themselves. We'll be taking a closer comparative look here in a moment. We also get just a charging cable, which is USB Type-C, and an aux 3.5mm cable if you want to use these as wired headphones. So taking a closer look here, most immediately, they definitely have a different aesthetic compared to the Q35s, which were a lot more matte, not necessarily quite as shiny. Although the cup sizes are similar, I'd say that the last gen model was maybe a touch slimmer in terms of the circumference, but not by too much. Both of these are still relatively compact and fairly lightweight headphones for being full size over the ear. It's not necessarily any heavier, I'd say, than the last gen model. You get that shiny chrome-like accent and finish when you're reflecting it on the light, which I do think make it look a little more polished and attractive. As just as the Space series, the material here is no longer coated in a layer of soft touch rubber, but rather it's just a matte plastic, but still doesn't really attract fingerprints or dust. And the headband here is still made out of metal, which allows you to easily adjust per your liking. All the actions here feel quite stiff and responsive, and everything in terms of the folding actions, just like before, make it compact enough when you're taking it on the road for travel. And we're still talking about very comfortable memory foam pads, which will be very good in terms of longer endurance and not putting too much stress or strain as you are listening to music. And taking a closer look at the controls, located at the bottom, these are pretty much identical to the previous gen version. So we have access to a auxiliary jack, also a play pause control, and also a volume rocker. One difference with the last gen model, though, was the volume keys were split into two separate buttons versus now they are combined, but otherwise the layout is almost exactly the same. Now on the other side, you have just the Type-C port for charging and also a power key. Finally, there is a active noise cancellation key. One thing I will say though is just like the previous gen model, unfortunately you aren't able to still use active noise cancellation when the Bluetooth modes are turned off. So that is still one thing I really would like them to see add in the future, such as if you are just maybe resting or taking a sleep, but you don't necessarily want to listen to music. Minor quirk aside, and I was able to wear it for a couple of hours really without noticing too much stress or strain. Even if you have glasses, the headband is comfortable and stretchable enough that it doesn't really apply too much pressure. So good in terms of the overall fit. Before we dive into the audio quality and performance, a few final remarks. You do have fast charging on these, so 5 minutes of top-up will get you up to 4 hours of listening time, which is great. And otherwise, they have 40mm drivers. Though it's the same size as the last gen model at 40mm, it's made of a different material, which they claim will get you even more crisp details and audio performance, but we'll talk about that more in a moment. So here is a companion app that you can find, which is the same for all of their headphones. You're able to pair to them and be able to control things like the active noise cancellation, whether it's off, on, or there is in transparency mode or ambient mode that you're able to further trigger to hear what's going on around you. You have the custom mapping that you can use to increase or decrease the intensity up to 5 levels. The higher up, maybe slightly more pressure you'll be able to detect. Now under the adaptive noise cancellation mode, this will detect your surroundings using the microphones to automatically trigger and change that overall effect. So say you're in a really quiet space, it will lower the noise cancellation to be only level 1, versus if you're in a super crowded space, if you're on a plane, a subway, it will try to crank it up all the way to level 4 or 5. This is a pretty smart function that I think actually works quite well. Otherwise though, the intensity and overall performance of the ANC, I would say, is definitely improved compared to the Q35s, and they are now going to get you just more immersiveness, especially with mids and lower frequency sounds. So things like, again, engine noises are now completely repressed, pretty much. You're able to now listen to music without turning the volume quite as high, rest in more comfort, and even voices tend to get repressed to a pretty large extent. We can also trigger a safe volume listening mode, so this will try to, again, use the detection to try and lower the decibel in terms of the volume level if you're going over certain limits. In terms of controls, you're able to also remap things like the noise cancellation button. You can also turn off certain functions from being cycled, as well as you can double press to activate certain things like a bass boosted mode if you prefer, which is pretty neat. And also in terms of sound effects, you're able to find a few preset EQs. So things like their Soundcore signature sound, you can have bass on or off. You also have the ability to also toggle into acoustic, bass reducing, classic, podcast, dance, electronic, so on and so forth modes per your liking. And these different effects do make a pretty dramatic difference on the sound, especially the Soundcore signature mode I do find to be really pleasant, giving us a very dynamic mix in terms of details, but also energetic. And then in terms of custom, you can also pull on the frequency ranges of the overall EQ map yourself to either enhance or decrease certain frequency ranges. With that being said, you don't really get some of their more advanced features, which are currently exclusive on their premium TWS wireless buds, such as the hearing test, which does a custom mapping of how well you're able to detect different frequency ranges and then create your own personalized EQ automatically. But aside from that, pretty much all the other features you're able to find very fully stacked. Under advanced settings, you'll also be able to trigger a Ldac mode to turn on automatically. Now, Ldac will get you the highest possible resolution out of Bluetooth. It's compatible with all Android devices, but unfortunately, it's not a codec that works with iOS. That is one thing to keep in mind. Now, another thing here is because it's going to be sending over more data using Bluetooth to get you the higher quality, it will also slightly decrease things like latency. So, say if you're gaming, you would probably want to use it in the regular listening mode. But if you wanted to get you kind of the best audio experience, if you have the overall you're just listening to a podcast or album, that's where Ldac can definitely help. When it comes to the all-important question of do these actually sound better than the last-gen Q35s, I would say yes. However, it is a pretty subtle upgrade in that direct sense because the Q35s were already excellent-sounding headphones. Very good in terms of detail and also having Ldac certification. These, I would say, maybe you're getting a 5 to 10% bump in terms of getting even more clarity thanks to the combination of a newer Bluetooth chip as well as upgraded drivers. So certain nuances of the sound, textures of a singer's voice, instrumentals can just pop off just a little bit more. Still preserves a lot of very good punchy bass because of the 40mm driver, but never really overpowering, but it's tight and responsive when you're listening to drum beats, EDM music, so bass heads will also love this. You can turn that up even more, and again, using the custom EQs, but at the same time, acoustic tracks, vocals, trebles also shine through and pack plenty of detail. So these are, again, all-rounders in terms of pretty much all genres that you're throwing at them. They sound excellent, very stable, and didn't have any disconnections or anything of that liking. Watching videos still felt fine in the normal mode as well. So overall, that's more or less it as far as our quick hands-on review of the Soundcore by Anker Space Q45s. Again, the latest gen model primarily just packs, I would say, a slightly more stylish appearance, longer battery life, as well as improved active noise cancellation, which arguably was the weakest feature from last year's model. And that really does deliver itself and now present a very competitive, again, option that still is considerably cheaper than many of the other, perhaps more well-known or at least established brands in the audio space, but this is now getting very close. So you can check out more details if you are interested in the links down below, but for now that's been our video. Thanks for watching here at OS Reviews.